we're in for such a treat today because I am speaking to the first woman who climbed up Everest on both sides. It is Cathy O'Dowd. Cathy is a climber, an author, a motivational speaker, and she's actually pretty extraordinary. However, you know, on this podcast, I don't like going after the concept of just being extraordinary as though there's some notion of magical fairy dust that's sprinkled on people at birth saying you're extraordinary and you're not. No, being extraordinary to me is about being ordinary and finding the extra within it. And what is so incredible about this conversation with Cathy is that she really practices that principle as well. She shares how the ordinary things in front of her, the ordinary opportunities that presented along her path, she chose to say yes to them. And in doing so, she opened up new doors of opportunity, or I would call them extra opportunities. And that led her to being an incredible climber, adventurer, and explorer. And something that we can really take from this conversation is how to say yes to the small things in life that can really up our game as we lead ourselves, our teams, our businesses, and our projects. So let's dive in and learn all about Cathy's extraordinary. Well, Cathy, it is such a delight and an honour to have you on the podcast today. How are you in snowy Andorra?
Recovering from a cold, so I sound a little hoarser than normal, but delighted to be with you and looking out of my window to the first snowfall of the winter.
Oh, gorgeous. Well, I'm at the beginning of a cold, so between us, we're going to sound quite croaky and bunged up for sure.
Oh, wow.
Well, let's kick off then, Cathy, with what does extraordinary leadership mean to you?
I think what I really like about the idea of extraordinary leadership is the ordinary of it. Because what it really means is moving through the life you've got, the life you live, trying to turn it to your best account for yourself, for the people you interact with, and that's both the people you lead and the people you are in a team with, or however it works. For me, extraordinary leadership is just that act of being self-aware as you move through your ordinary life to try and get the very best out of every interaction with yourself, with other people.
Now, for someone who is just totally ringing my bell about loving our ordinary life, I'm here speaking to you, Cathy, and your life is quite far from ordinary by my standards in terms of what you've done with your expeditions and accomplishments, physical accomplishments, adventurous ones. How do you marry together what you've accomplished with mountaineering in an expedition with ordinary?
I see it as ordinary because I see the steps that connect the beginning with where I am now, which of course is what we miss when we tend to look at other people and be overawed or demoralized, depressed by other people's apparent success. What we're missing is the infinite number of small steps that took them from being a kid to whoever they are now. So for me, I never pursued some great goal. My God, I must conquer Everest. I'm 6 years old and here's my life's mission ahead of me.
Yeah.
I don't think like that. I follow a process. I follow journeys. I just started climbing, rock climbing at 18, mountaineering at 21, Africa, the Andes, bit by bit, step by step, each challenge a little bit harder, a little bit higher. And even when I unexpectedly got parachuted onto the first South African Everest team, frankly, as the token woman, with no expectation of getting to the top, it was still a journey. What can I learn? I'm here as an apprentice. Whatever happens, I walk away from this with more experience, and that's what I'm interested in. And I followed that path, and that path ended on the summit of Everest, which then in turn opened a whole nother set of doors. So although from the outside, yes, it's quite the story, from the inside, it is still just an ordinary person taking one step after another, eyes open for opportunity, a sense of what I'm hoping to accomplish as I move forward.
I love that because it's so It's so ordinary and so brilliant. I was doing a little talk a few weeks ago and saying, so I've just written a book, and I remember some people saying, wow, I'd love to write a book. How have you done that? And I actually demystified it in a similar way by saying it's not like there's this fairy dust, is there, that just sprinkles upon you and you go, ooh, I'm a book, I'm an author. Or, I mean, that's minimal compared to your acclaimed
God,
author.
I wish it was. It's so much work to be an author.
But like climbing Everest, it's not like there was fairy dust that just got sprinkled upon you to pop you at the top. It is the choices you make and the doors, as you talk about, the sets of doors that are open to you, that you open and go through to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. And it's these small steps, almost like leveling up on a game, aren't they? Like Super Mario Land is just what's popping into my mind, just leveling up to the next level. But how have you found that these opportunities have opened up for you? Because I coach people who are a bit flatlined in life, who want more opportunities. How have you found a way of seeing opportunities and opening doors to opportunities?
It's an interesting question, because you can absolutely get sort of, caught in a cul-de-sac somewhere where you feel you can't see any opportunities in front of you. And there are a lot of ways that life can do that to you. I think I have two ideas about this that matter. The one is that you need to try and open out that cul-de-sac, whatever it is. So when I was trying to find more opportunities to climb, I'm young, I'm female, I'm in South Africa, which is not a country known for climbing. We're at the bottom end of the world, very far away from any of the world centers of mountaineering or any of the major mountain chains, anything. You constantly try and open your circumstances. So in my case, whatever it is, join a club, look for people online, take some training courses, get some books, go out there on your own and try and build experience. There are a dozen ways in which you can just try and open your circumstances slightly. And every time you open, they become slightly wider, and that in turn should then give you a slightly wider set of choices going forward. I think the other one, and this is quite a tricky one possibly for women, don't let perfection get in the way of good enough. My huge break of my lifetime was this competition to be the woman who joined this Everest team. Now, this was horrible. I mean, this was back in 1995. So, things were a good deal more sexist than they are now. And the men had been invited based on their CVs. And the women were going to have to do this reality television, what felt like a bikini parade for the media. It was sexist as hell. I was a postgraduate student at a university, and I was just like, we don't do this. Yeah. And yet, all I could think was if I don't jump through these silly hoops, some other woman will go, and I'll never know if that could have been me. So I jumped through the hoops, and I did it with my teeth gritted, and I didn't like all of it.
Wow.
Don't take a look at an opportunity and make it an excuse. Oh no, that's not appropriate, that's too sexist, this is wrong with it, that's wrong with it. Look at it and go, is there any way I can, while staying true to my deepest values, can I grab this and turn it to my own account? Even if they want it to go some other direction, can I grab this and get what I want out of it? And that's what I did with my big break. I want experience. I want to go to the Himalaya. And I'm going to take this weird, uncomfortable option because it's the only one I've got.
That's very profound, because we talk about integrity so much now that there's almost an inversion of integrity of like, I won't touch that because I just haven't got, it's just against my integrity. And
I agree. We're a little too busy talking about integrity, talking about authenticity. I can't be my authentic self in those circumstances.
Yeah.
Be careful, because you can end up just using this as an excuse because you're too scared to do something where you're not sure if you're good enough.
And actually, there's a thing about, we don't talk enough about humbling ourselves. And actually, sometimes you do have to humble yourselves to do things that are not quite what you would like, not quite right, not quite in grain with how you would like your reality to be. But it's a humble stance, isn't it? Rather than a selling yourself out stance, is what I'm hearing.
I'd take another one on it. I think it's a curious stance because it's a
Ooh.
little too easy to go like, oh, I know. I know who I am. I know what I stand for. I know what I want to do. Like, really? You've been alive for 20 years, 30 years, 40, 50 years. It's still not that much in the history of the world. Of the, what are we, 8 billion people on the planet? You've probably met a few hundred of them. Do you really know? I think often we don't know. And when you get into the opportunity, it opens your perspective. You learn about other people's opinions, other people's experience, other people's cultural values. And you go like, oh, okay, there's more to this than I understood at the beginning.
Wow.
And that has made me a bigger person as well as introduced me to a bigger set of opportunities. So yeah, again, I think we're living at a time where we're a little too rigid about standing our ground and not often open enough to learning from other people. We don't know what we don't know, and you won't find out unless you try.
I love it. It makes life open up as a really exciting playground with that mindset, doesn't it?
And sometimes you get out there and learn things and you go like, oh my God, all right, I'm taking a step away from that. But that's good life knowledge as well. You know, it's okay for it to happen like that. It's all learning. It's all moving you forward.
When something you said that I'm really interested about was when you used the word you got parachuted in on the South African team to climb Everest as a tokenism for the female candidate. When you got parachuted in and found yourself as the only female, I don't want to make assumptions of what that would have felt like, but what did that feel like? Can you remember, and can you talk us through how you found your way through that experience of being suddenly on this team as the only woman?
It was like everything. It was an interesting, multi-layered experience because initially I very much felt that I had sort of token woman's emblazoned on my forehead, and I did. And there was a lot of other team conflict going on. It wasn't all about this. The sexism was almost turned into a bit of a sideshow of conflict going on between the men. And eventually some part of the team did actually walk out on the project and left. So riding through all of that, not getting too bogged down in, is this sexist? Because sometimes it wasn't. As the woman, it looked as if it was sexist, but actually there were more layers of complication.
Right.
So while I agree that we should call out sexism, and we're better at that than we were 20 years ago, we should also just take a couple of beats and go, is it? Yeah. Or is it other stuff? And before I demand that you know, I interpret this as sexism and therefore this is my truth, is it? Because there was some stuff that happened on the expedition which I thought of as sexist, and the guys would have said was hazing the new person and they'd have done it to a guy, but because it involved cooking, it so obviously seemed sexist. And anyway, none of this was the real problem. The real problem was actually that we were trapped and stressed and not making progress and the weather was bad. So by the time you've dug 4 stages down, it's like, actually, the problem is something else entirely. So the first thing I mean is just take a beat and try and understand the multiple layers before you jump to a conclusion. The other thing that I noticed from this setup was I carried the label of token in my heart, I guess, much longer than the men around me carried it. Wow. In retrospect, the men I was with, once we got going on the mountain, were like, oh, good, she can climb. She's solid, not a problem. Let's go. And I was still thinking, oh my God, do they think of me as a token? Have I proved my worth? Am I being good enough? Long after everybody else was just, oh, we're a bunch of climbers, let's go climbing. And I had to let go of that. And that's a me thing. I had to find my own confidence. I had to believe in the way I was being treated by the rest of my team. Wow. And I had to let token woman go.
How did you?
And honestly, the experience just got so intense and so overwhelming that I stopped having space to think about it. And then when I got to thinking about it again a bit later, I was like, oh, right, that's a thing that's just slipped into the past.
Wow.
So I think this might be one for people who have a little bit of a tendency to ruminate about things.
Yeah.
I'm not much of a ruminator, really. Try not to, or try and have tricks in your tool bag to help you let rumination go, because it may be keeping you stuck in the past about a problem that is actually dissolved. It's not there anymore.
Do you know, I mean, that's a side conversation I'd love to have, which we will just touch on lightly, is rumination, because I think that's where we see a lot of people struggling with imposter syndrome and as you say, carrying labels far longer than the circumstances require. And you say that people who do ruminate need some tips and tricks to manage that. I mean, a tip and trick you had was to actually be climbing up a very difficult mountain. So your life, your energy, your fuel, your ability to survive probably took precedent over your thinking power. So as you said, it just kind of took a back seat. But how do you think people in business spaces can borrow from that to not ruminate?
Well, I think there's a reason that a lot of senior executives do some kind of extreme sport. And the most common ones are marathons and Ironman, because they're fairly easy access. Road cycle racing, that's another fairly easy access one. But there are various. And I don't think it's just that they're all overachievers, although they might be. It's partly that by being intensely involved, as in you're trying to do it at a high level, a personal high level rather than a world-class high level. You're trying to do it at a high level. You're trying to do something that is physically demanding, but that is also mentally challenging, because these extreme sports always require some kind of risk management and a good deal of mental and physical self-management. You cannot ruminate. People who say that, oh, for a rest, I'm going to sit on the sofa, or I'm sorry, but women who are like endlessly doing self-care, which mostly seems to involve sitting on the sofa while painting your nails or something. It leaves you a lot of time to ruminate, to have stuff go round and round and round in your head. Get off the sofa, get involved in an outdoor active sport where you're chasing personal achievement levels. It's good for your body, it's good for your mind, it leaves you no space to ruminate, and it will take you back to the office mentally fresher, even if you're physically tired.
Cathy, you're so right. I mean, so this summer, I'm sadly going through a divorce, and this summer my husband took the children away for a week, which was a new experience, and a lot of friends and family said, well, go on a spa, go and have a retreat. And I thought, if I do that, I didn't think of the word ruminate, but I'll probably collapse. So guess what I did? I mean, I tell everyone, so they're all sick of hearing the story. I went to Morocco to learn to kite surf.
Exactly. That is such a great response.
And do you know, it was so empowering. I'm 42. I've been saying for 10 years, I'm going to learn to kite surf. And I did. And it hurt. I nearly broke my arm. I had bruises to prove the pain. I had to get my head in the game. I had to experience frustration. I got cross with my instructor. I yelled at him and he yelled at me. And then I got it on the last sort of 3 hours. And I was just going, yes, I've got the bruises to prove it. And, oh, it was so empowering and has filled me up to kind of keep me going.
Yes, I'd love to pick up on just 2 quick ideas about why I really do think this is a great thing.
Please.
The one, of course, is the self-confidence you got from it.
Right.
Which then translates back into other things. If you're feeling you're being ground down by your job, it's great to go away and do a sport where you go like, I've got this. Here I'm good. But the other one, and I think this is particularly for middle-aged, thoroughly successful people, go and do something where you're a beginner. It's really humbling and it's really useful. It reminds you what the low-level people in your own organization probably feel like. They're new, they're confused, they're getting it wrong, they're making a fool of themselves, they're failing where other people are succeeding. It won't just freshen up your brain by making you learn something new and stop you being quite so self-satisfied about the level of success you've achieved in your life. It will also link you back to people, you know, who are beginners in your area of expertise about how challenging it is to learn something new.
I love that. Also, I think there's a sense of, if you're a perfectionist, just nodding back to that, or someone who's very acclaimed in a space, the sports or the extreme experiences you used to have, you don't want to touch them again because you'll only ever be worse. So it's demoralizing. So it keeps a lot of people quite stuck and immobile. They don't do physical stuff because they'll never be as good as they once were. So taking up something new is great because the only way is up, right?
Exactly. And it's interesting. So just to say that I do walk my talk, obviously climbing has been my life, but I do less of it than I used to, partly because I am to some extent falling off the edge of a 30-year career. And like you said, I'm never going to be as good as I once was, because some of it is just sheer physical strength and fitness. But I still climb, but I've also taken up other sports. And at the moment, I'm particularly into canyoning and sea kayaking.
Yeah.
They're both travel through wilderness activities. They're both manage risk activities. They're both skilled technical activities. Wow. And I'm very much on that upward learning curve with both of them. And I find that inspiring. I find it immersive. I can see myself improving. I love the great feedback I get from that.
Oh, absolutely. It's funny how the conversation is taking us here, because learning something to be in your body as well. We talk about all this mindfulness stuff, which I completely agree with. But being mindful is about being really present, and actually doing a sport or an activity that requires you to be in the moment, right there. Like when I was kite surfing, it was so present orientated. It's so good for us meditatively, I would say.
I think it's very good for us. And I think it's particularly good for women, and women are slightly less likely to do it. And one of the reasons is it means your body is something other than something men admire. Yes. You can look at your body in the mirror and go, these are these legs that climbed Everest. These are the arms that held up the sail on that kite surf. These are the hands that can cling to that rock face. Whatever it is, it gives you a different relationship with your body.
I love that. Because, I mean, it's funny, having a relationship with your body almost sounds like an unusual thing to consider on the podcast like this. But we are so detached from our physicality, aren't we? I often think that with our bodies, it's a bit like an ox. We're like, you know, go faster, go harder, carry more stuff, you know, get on with it. Rather than being integrated in it and being able to really enjoy, if you have health, what it can do. It's a privilege, isn't it? And it's about being alive. And when I coach people who are sitting at offices or at home on their laptops, and really believing that they haven't got time to go out because it will take away from their productivity, even though the science says actually you can do more in less time. If you get your kind of thinking space more effective, if you get your physical state different, people still, the science isn't enough. The habit of just staying on a laptop, it's heartbreaking because it's so devoid of what the body wants. It's like going to the ox again. It's like, just stay in an environment that's going to, crash you. It's really sad. But I'm not saying it's easy to not be like that. It's sad, isn't it?
It is. And I mean, where success in our modern culture is terribly sedentary. It's all cars and planes and office chairs. And even there, we're trapped in a single position, focused for hours and hours and hours. Yeah. And yet, if you move, you will think more clearly. You will get fresh ideas. You will get new perspectives. I think probably the best thing anybody can do for themselves is, at the very least, is just get up and walk briskly, and let yourself think over your problems, your issues, your challenges for the day while you're walking rather than while you're sitting.
I love that. It's so classic. It's so obvious, but it's great. I want to go back to something you said about your team when you were climbing Everest and there were different dynamics and it was all, some people left. You said things happen when you're trapped and you're stressed. You have to let go of things. So you let go of the mindset of being a token woman. Being trapped and being stressed, those are common human feelings in fast-paced business worlds. What did you learn from being trapped and stressed about how to perform well within it?
A couple of ideas came out of it. One is that it's one of the key reasons for the failure of a project, is the team spiraling into conflict, and the conflict is really born out of stress rather than out of there being any major issues. The stress may be about lack of progress, so the lack of progress may be something you have to work on, but it's the stress and the stress responses that are making the interaction of the team so toxic and so difficult, and that's where you spiral beyond the point of saving yourselves into collapse and chaos. The next thing I noticed about stress is different people react differently. And this is going to be cultural, and it's also going to be gender-based. And it's worth being aware of your own stress reaction and aware that other people's stress won't look like yours.
Yeah.
So this is the one for the woman. We burst into tears. That's how it goes. And I have burst into tears on the side of Everest, and it doesn't feel good. But I will say bursting into tears is remarkably not very destructive. You look like a bit of an idiot while you're sobbing, and other people are uncomfortable. But that's about it. That's not that bad. And frankly, as anyone who's had a good cry knows, it takes about 5 minutes. And then on the whole, you're probably going to feel better afterwards. And you could probably pull yourself together and go like, okay, let's get back to the issue here. I've watched men on the side of Everest have a fist fight.
Really?
And that was the issue was negligible, non-existent. This was sheer stress. Now that is damaging. That's going to get you up on an assault charge if you weren't on the side of Everest. So that's another reaction to stress that's a really damaging one. I once had a CEO at a talk I was giving ask me, I think it's okay for people to show emotion at the workplace. Don't you agree with me? And I was like, oh, I know what he means. He wants me to say it's okay for him to shout at his subordinates. Because when he gets emotional, he gets angry.
Yeah.
And we're now at a point where we're prepared to acknowledge that anger is an emotion rather than somehow a rational reaction where, tears, for example, is an irrational reaction. They're both an emotional reaction. He wants to be told he can shout at his subordinates, which I don't think he should. And my answer was, if you're going to say emotion can be showed like that in your workplace, you've got to say that bursting into tears is just as valid as shouting at somebody, and that all things are allowed and won't be penalized. He didn't like that answer. He didn't want to know that his shouting was the equivalent of some woman
someone bursting
into tears. All of them are just a stress reaction, and we should give ourselves and other people some grace within limits. I'm not saying that they have grace to shout at you too much. And we should also be aware for ourselves and our teams, how do they tend to react to stress, and what are the management techniques we can have in the rucksack to try and reduce the stress and make the stress reaction minimally damaging to the group.
Well, there's two questions I have on the back of that. One of them is, what do we have in the rucksack? What are the tools? And the other question I have is, how do we make sure we're not rationalizing our stress reactions?
Yes, that's a very fair one. Well, let's just take the toolbox.
Tools. Let's do the tools.
The tools in the rucksack. Because I always think of life as being like this. You approach any situation with a set of skills, tools, tricks, techniques. The breathing and counting. It's what you would tell your 2-year-old. It's what you should tell your CEO. It's the same deal. Big breath in, hold, big breath out, counting down before you do anything. Those are the quickest and simplest ones. The breathing thing is astonishing. If you ever have the time, you can actually sit there, do the breathing, and watch your pulse rate lower as you are doing it. If you can get attuned to your body, you can actually feel your stress reactions lowering as you breathe your way into a state of calm. I think my other one is just kind of self-awareness. Know how you tend to react to stress. If you really think it's And it can help to just warn people, like, oh, as a woman, sorry, this is the kind of thing that can bring me to tears. It's not a problem. I mean, if you're the kind of guy who gets angry, you'd at least tell people, I need to walk down the corridor for 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. And then I'll come back into the room. Mm-hmm. Go and walk your anger out. Something like that. So know yourself realistically, and possibly help to talk people through what you're about to do, and then you will rejoin the meeting in a minute. Yeah. I think that can help. When we're fooling ourselves, when we're trying to say that our stress reaction is justified and other people should take it. Empathy. Can you take a minute and just think what it's like to be at the receiving end of this? And work back from there. And empathy is a tool that we actually need to work on. And I think it's a bit hard for successful executives because you often have to be fairly ruthless about business decisions, and you do have to think about people as assets.
Yeah.
And this is part of what this gets difficult. People become numbers, people become assets, people become negatives or positives on your balance sheet. So any kind of practice where you step outside and reactivate your empathy muscle so you can remember what it's like to be at the receiving end of the stress reaction or of the corporate directive or of the downsizing or whatever it is that you're doing, I think helps you be a better leader.
Yeah. That's interesting you say empathy is a tool, because I think that's a really insightful paradigm shift on how to access empathy, because a tool is something external that we choose to use, whereas if it's empathy as a state, it's almost like this magic dust again of like, well, I've just got natural empathy, in this Clifton Strength Finder, it's one of the strengths, isn't it? It's high up for me, whereas it might be lower down for you, and therefore it kind of makes us think it is this fairy dust of a gift you either have or haven't got. But that's where language breaks down when it's not about the word in and of itself, it's about what it encapsulates and how to utilize it. And it is a tool to use. But when people are, stressed, trapped, like you know too well, how do you remember to pick up the tool of empathy when the stakes are really fast and high?
I think let's start with the idea of trapped.
Yeah.
Because there's no doubt that I think people feel most trapped when they feel they have no control. Mm. Everything is happening to them and they can't change any of it. So I'm not a counselor, but what I would do with myself, what I would say to a friend would be to try and create a little more space in your trapped position, which means finding anything where you can take control, a little bit of control. Even if, I don't know, getting up from the desk and walking away to pour yourself a cup of coffee, choosing to stop a stressful conversation, we're going to take a break and we'll come back to this in 5 minutes. Anything where you've slightly expanded your space, so you're not completely trapped, you've got a little bit of control, which means you've given yourself a little bit of room to maneuver. And in that little bit of room to maneuver, now you have a moment to start trying to think. So the next thing you want to do is create 5 minutes of thinking space for yourself. Mm. And in that thinking space, now you can start to go, what's in my tool bag? Yeah. What have I used before in a difficult situation like this that helped? And now I do quite a lot of rescue training because I do extreme sports. For example, I recently did a qualification in sea kayaking. And one of the things that can happen, you're with a group of people, somebody's in a sea kayak, a huge wave has turned them over, it's washed them up against rocks. There are other waves coming back at them, echoing back off the rocks, so it's muddled up. They're upside down, they're possibly they haven't pulled their spray deck, they might be drowning upside down. You've got to react in seconds.
Oh my gosh.
And we have a mnemonic, there are a whole bunch of mnemonics, but one of them is stop. It's basically stop, think. Because people who rush in without thinking will do the wrong thing. Even though somebody is possibly drowning in front of you, you are supposed to stop and think. What has gone wrong? What's the environment like? What are my options? What will I do? I think we can take this into the corporate world as well.
Yeah.
So it's stop, create a little space, create a little bit of control, and then think about your toolbox. And at that point, and if you're at the low end of empathy on the spectrum, it's consciously remind yourself to empathize with the people you're dealing with. Take a moment to think what it must be like for them in this situation before you re-engage. And I do think you talk about the fairy dust. I like that idea because it's like you've either got it or you don't. But it's not true. No. All these things are a spectrum. Yeah. And I'm not saying that the person with no empathy at all can be turned into an empath. They can't. But what we can do is move ourselves on the spectrum, widen our capacity. And your challenge is to know yourself well enough to know what your weaknesses and strengths are, and then to look at widening your capacity where you've got a weakness that is playing against you in your life.
Yeah. There's a quote you'll love. I want to make sure we get the O and the P of stop, by the way. But there's a thing I love, which is, I don't know who quotes it, but I use it a lot. Be yourself, comma, more of, comma, with skill. And it's beautiful, right? So it's like if you're someone that's really direct and really, you know, really kind of just loves to just crack on with it, be more like that with, you know, more of it. But the skill part is bring the empathy with you. The skill part is to stop a little bit more often to think more, isn't it? As opposed to making us all an empath and something we're not. It's just bringing these skillful toolbox items with us.
Exactly. Yeah. So navigate skillfully. You'll have a set of weaknesses. You'll have a set of strengths. Yeah. Understand the power and the drawbacks of those. So quite a lot of this is just asking people to have done a fair amount of self-reflection about who they are, what they value, what they're good at, what they're not good at. And that's not always easy. So again, it can be a real help to lean into any opportunity to get feedback, whether it's through therapy, whether it's through anything offered by your company, 360-degree review, whether it's through, as I said, being a beginner in a new activity, because then you're likely to have a trainer giving you feedback about where you're doing well and where you're not.
What is the O and the P for?
Oh, God, I knew you were going to ask me this.
If we can't remember, the S and the T is just good enough. You've passed the test. It doesn't matter now.
Because I was going, stop, think.
Can I guess?
Completely blank. Yes.
Okay, I would think that O is options.
Yes.
Would it be?
I think it's something like stop, think, options, perform.
Perform, yes, play it out, yeah.
Exactly, so stop, don't rush in. Think, what's going on? The key in the thinking, what are my different options? And of course, what will happen if I apply those different options? And only then do you perform or plan or whatever it is.
Yeah, Yeah, but there's such a focus on that because we're so disparate in life, aren't we? With, you know, everyone thinks they've got ADHD when they haven't. They're just distracted in thought. And because we're not stopping to think. And, you know, something I talk about with coaching is get a coach. I call it aeration chamber time. Like just get into decant yourself into a different space to be allowed to think, like almost let your dog off a lead, like, you know, your brain, unclip it from the lead of life and let it, you know, if you take your dog for a walk without a lead, it just goes wherever it wants to go, doesn't it? And sometimes our brain just needs a chance to just think and be untamed in order to then get the focus again.
Absolutely. And it works at every level. That's big picture thinking, give your brain a chance to refocus, to come back with more creative ideas. Or it's literally when somebody said something and you're about to make a really nasty reply that is going to sink the relationship. Don't. Stop. Bite your lip. Count to 3 before you say. The next level, don't send the email. Walk around the office for 5 minutes and come back to it before you press send. At every level, We react a little too fast, I think, to many
Yeah.
things.
Yes, for sure we do. As we come into land, Cathy, I am loving this conversation, by the way. What is your household item that you have brought in that exemplifies extraordinary leadership?
Right, I'm going to show you, and it runs straight off what we've been talking about. Okay,
Perfect.
this is a cup of decent European espresso. Thank you very much. Not your tubs of American Joe. And this is kind of the personification of stop and think.
Huh.
Walk down to the kitchen, make a nice, small, beautifully flavored sip of coffee,
Yeah.
stand there and drink it and think. This is my kind of personification. It's not so, and I'm not thinking of it as like, oh, it's the buzz of the caffeine. It's not about that. It's the ritual of making something beautifully flavored in European style in a small amount, and then savoring it while you take that stop and reset, stop and think, stop and enjoy, stop and just be fully in this moment of your life. So
Wow.
here's to good European coffee.
It's so inspiring. I'm going to go make myself an espresso and do just that. Because the word you said there about savouring, and I think that in and of itself is a way of, to me, savouring is by being present, by stopping and thinking, you're getting the most out of the moment in life. And that's not ordinary. It's ordinary to rush. And that is extra, to wring out life like a flannel in the moment. And I don't do it enough, but I feel invited into that. So thank you.
Oh, I love doing that. People obsess about the summit of Everest, but actually it's the moments where you stop anywhere on the mountain and just look around you and you go like, oh my God, look at this place. Look where I am. Look how far I've come.
Yeah.
You don't worry about what needs to happen next. That's for another moment. Just right now, it's just like, my God, this is my life and I'm living it.
Because actually there's something about, I once heard, and I love this as a philosophy of, this moment is the perfect moment. Like right now, if you can, even in pain and suffering, even in grief, you're feeling life, you're experiencing something. And that is, I find that a very stilling and very rich way of living, to go, this is the perfect moment. Even in the midst of all sorts of troubles, it's beautiful, isn't it?
Indeed.
So that's, yeah. Cathy, I cannot thank you enough for your time. It has been such an honour to have you on the show, and we will put in the show notes all the ways of getting in touch with you and your book and your keynote, should people want keynote with you, which I would love to hear you live. But thank you so much for joining us.
It's been my pleasure.
Thank you. I found that conversation with Cathy to be so rich and so amusing, actually, in a way that we can come into a conversation with an explorer, an Everest conqueror, and end in a place of going, what really matters actually is being able to have a cup of coffee that's really well made and be really present and really enjoy it. That her learning is distilled into something as accessible as that. How ordinary is that? And yet, how many of us miss that ordinary? How many of us are seeking like such a big pursuit of an extraordinary experience, of a big fat moment, like an Everest moment, our business to climb, to scale it, to be brilliant, when actually distilled down, it's about the thing in front, doing it well, being present with it, and navigating skillfully. That's something that Cathy said towards the end. How do we navigate skillfully? And it is that skill to be able to be in the present, to say yes to the opportunities that come our way, to keep knocking the doors open of new opportunities as they arise. And I mentioned at the end of the podcast about aeration chambers and coaching and time out, to be able to stop and to think properly. And so if you would like to have some time in an aeration chamber to get your thinking slowed down so that you can respond more effectively, then please get in touch. Thanks so much for joining me for this conversation today. And if you want to hear more extraordinary top tips and tactics, then please remember to like and subscribe, or join me on my YouTube channel to see the full video, and or subscribe to my newsletter at dollywaddell.com. See ya.